Please welcome former Member of Parliament and UK Trade Envoy to Israel, Ian Austin.
I want to tell you about a 10-year-old Jewish boy from Czechoslovakia. A few days after Hitler invaded in March 1939, he was put on a train to England by his mum and teenage sisters. It was the last time he'd see them. They were rounded up, sent first to a ghetto, then to Theresienstadt, before being sent to Treblinka, where they were murdered in October 1942. He couldn't even speak English when he arrived in the UK, but he grew up to become the youngest grammar school head teacher in the country. He was honoured by Her Majesty the Queen for charitable work, and he brought up 4 children. Ladies and gentlemen, that little boy was my dad, and it is because of him that I'm here today. Until last year, I was a Labour member of the UK Parliament. I left the Labour Party I left the Labour Party and Parliament to fight extremism, anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. But I come to you today with a message of hope. I want to tell you how good, fair-minded people of all political backgrounds can come together to stand up to fight anti-Zionism and rampant anti-Semitism. I joined the British Labour Party as a teenager because I wanted to help fight racism and build a fairer society. I was elected as a local councillor in my 20s. I worked for Tony Blair's government in my 30s and as a senior advisor to former Prime Minister Gordon Brown. I was elected as a Member of Parliament and served as a government minister in my 40s. And I am proud to say that all the way through, I was an active member of Labour Friends of Israel. And I was only one of 3 MPs who spoke out against the JCPOA deal with Iran. Now, historically, the Labour Party had always been steadfast in its support for Israel, including under the leaderships of Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. And while there were signs that support might be waning, it was not until 2015, when an obscure backbench Member of Parliament called Jeremy Corbyn was elected leader, that everything changed. And as soon as the party began to shift, I started speaking out. Not once, but repeatedly and consistently. You see, for me, with my background and the values I was brought up with, there was no choice. My parents taught me that prejudice leads to intolerance and eventually to persecution, and that every one of us has a duty not to stand by, but to make a difference, to fight discrimination, hatred and bigotry wherever we find it. So I campaigned inside my party against extremism and the one-sided attacks against Israel, each and every time they reared their ugly head. Then in 2018, while participating on a March of the Living trip to Auschwitz, I was introduced to a Holocaust survivor as a British Member of Parliament. He looked up at me and he said, "From which party?" And when I replied, he asked, "Are you not ashamed to be in the Labour Party with all the anti-Semitism?" I'll never forget hearing those words. To be asked that question in the country where my father's entire family was murdered, it shook me to my core. And that's when I knew that I would have to leave the party. But it was still not an easy decision to make. The Labour Party had been my life. And I did not leave to join another party or to stop fighting, but to shine a spotlight and to demand others fight too, because that's what all of us should always do when we see a wrong being done. I sat as an independent member of Parliament, and I remain grateful that Prime Minister Theresa May appointed me to serve as the UK's Trade Envoy to Israel. And I should add that I steadfastly oppose any attempt to boycott or isolate the State of Israel. Thank you. Now, when a general election was called this past November, I decided not to seek re-election to Parliament. Instead, I was determined not to leave it to others, but to do everything I could to speak with a very clear focus and prevent Jeremy Corbyn, a man who had called Hamas and Hezbollah his friends, from becoming our country's Prime Minister. We set up the mainstream campaign to ensure those politicians who endorsed anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism would be defeated. And indeed, in December, Jeremy Corbyn received one of the worst defeats in UK history. I am so proud of the way ordinary, decent British people came together, rejected racism and extremism, and stood up for the Jewish community. Now, while we defeated Jeremy Corbyn at the election, we have not yet defeated the poison of anti-Semitism, nor the demonisation and delegitimisation of the Jewish state. That will take years of hard work. It may have started with one historic campaign, but it will not and it cannot end there. And while I trust our experience is a reminder that you have many allies in the fight to strengthen and protect Israel, I hope that our story also serves as a notice about how rapidly things can change. My friends, attacks on the Jewish state must be exposed for what they are, an attempt to isolate and weaken the one and only democracy in the Middle East. And extremism must be stopped at first sight. Otherwise, it can quickly move from the fringes directly to the centre of a movement. In all of this, AIPAC has a crucial role to play. AIPAC's work is known not only in the halls of Congress, but in the corridors of the United Kingdom Parliament as well. And your fight is our fight. We must ensure that Israel, the United Kingdom, and the United States work together to promote our shared democratic values and to seek peace and security for our world. Now, ladies and gentlemen, my father, Fred Austin, he passed away almost exactly a year ago. And in our last conversation, he said to me, he said, I want you to know that I'm very proud of you, and I really agree with all the decisions you've taken. And I hope to continue to lead my life in a way that would make my father proud. And so I make you this promise. I'll be standing with you every step of the way as we defeat extremism and support Israel. You can always count on me in this battle ahead. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.